evening. My name is Morgan Bryant, and I'm here to talk to you about parent-teacher communication. So there's a huge benefit in having parent-teacher communication amongst teachers, parents, and even the students. So over the years, parent-teacher communication is starting to dwindle, especially with age. I teach middle school, and I know a lot of times at the elementary level, parents and teachers communicate a lot more often. Parents are more willing to come up to the school, check on their child, because those are their little babies. They're still young, they're toddlers, they're still growing children. By the time students get to middle school, and especially in high school, the level of communication definitely starts to dwindle away, and the child is more independent. So they're able to handle things on their own. They like to keep their grades to themselves. And a lot of times, sometimes the parents feel out of the loop when it comes to school. So a child's educational journey begins the moment that they are born. So from the time that they are born, especially when they're infants, they're learning. They're like a sponge. They're soaking up everything that you're teaching them. When they first step foot into a classroom, it now changes to a more formal setting and a more formal way of learning. So we want to know, how much does a successful parent-teacher relationship affect the student? So we want to keep in mind that a parent-teacher relationship affects the student on so many levels. It's hugely important, and especially because the child spends most of their at-home life and their school life. That's where the child spends most of their time. They spend most of their time at home and at school. You wake up in the morning, you get dressed, you come to school, you stay at school for about 6 to 7 hours, you go home, you might do some homework, go to sleep, and you repeat that same routine Monday through Friday. So we can only imagine how much of an impact we can truly make on kids' lives as well as their parents. It's like we're that second backbone and that second support system that those kids need in order to be successful. So let's talk a little bit about managing our expectations. So most teachers have expectations of how we want our students to behave and how we want them to learn and what we believe that they should learn. I like starting this process on day one. That's open house. Open house usually happens the Saturday before school starts or the Friday before school starts, and I like to make my expectations known. I like to stress the importance of parent-teacher communication, because what I've noticed is the parents that actually come to open house are the parents that are more involved, because they took their time out to come to meet their teacher prior to school even starting. They have questions, they want to see your syllabus, they want to know the goal for the year. So my next bullet point is the goal for both the teacher and the parent. It should be established right at the beginning. It shouldn't be a goal that you came up with in the middle of the year. Now, I definitely understand that things need to be altered as time goes by. However, you want to make the goal, your personal goal for your students, known from the very beginning. Communication is essential for both the parents and the teachers, because what I'm working on in class, I want you to work on at home. Lastly, we have to depend on each other to benefit the student greatly. I love to tell the students that me and your mom are going to be best friends by the end of the year. Me and your dad, me and your grandma, we're going to be best friends by the end of the year. A lot of students look at a parent-teacher relationship as something negative. They always assume that you're going to tell on every little thing that they do in class, every little blurt out that they have, every failing grade or low grade that they might get. But a lot of times, that is not the reason why we want to stay in contact with your parent. If we can stay in contact with your parent, you won't get those failing grades. We won't get a lot of those misbehaviors and a lot of those actions and those unwanted behaviors happening within the classroom. So who is accountable? Is it the parent or is it the teacher? And I honestly should have added the student up there as well, because a lot of times we want to take the accountability back off of ourselves. As teachers, we have so many things that we already have to do. We grade papers, we come up with lesson plans, we have meetings, we're communicating with parents. We want to make sure that all of our energy is not put into the student, and the student is not putting forth that same energy. The parent is not putting forth that same energy. So a lot of times we want to confirm that our efforts are matched with the parents. So the answer to this question is both. The parent is accountable and the teacher is accountable. So we want to confirm that we are putting the accountability back onto the student, back onto the parent, so that we are not handling it all. At the end of the day, it is their grade. that is what they have to fall back on, and that is going to be on their record. And these grades make a difference, and they help us to make decisions as to what classes they will be in for the next year, what they're going to do when they go to high school. It's really setting the tone. Middle school is where you truly learn who you are, where you truly learn those organizational skills, where you learn how to handle life lessons, and it's truly a learning experience. So we want to take some of that pressure off of ourselves. So how do we get parents more involved? What I've noticed is that sometimes it's not that the parent does not want to be involved. So sometimes you want to ask yourself, why isn't the parent involved? It may have something to do with work or clashing commitments. You must never assume that they simply just don't want to be there. And I have actually a personal example. I recently just had a parent-teacher conference with a young man's mother and grandmother last month. And what I've noticed is in class, the boy seems to be very unengaged. He has no motivation. He does not like to do a lot of the work. And I don't believe it's because he cannot do the work. I just think he has no motivation. He doesn't want to persevere. He's switched from school to school, and he has no solid ground to stand on. When we had our parent-teacher conference, what I learned from his mom is that they see each other in passing. So he gets out of school at 3 o'clock. His mom goes to work around 3 o'clock. This young boy is looking for a motherly figure. He's looking for somebody that is going to challenge him, somebody that's going to push him, somebody that's going to motivate him. He needs that extra support at home, because I don't believe that school is enough for him. He needs that support at home to truly, kick it into gear and to start caring and to start getting those grades that he knows he deserves and the grades that he knows he can accomplish. From what the grandmother said, the grandmother seems to be worn out. She's already raised her kids are grown, and now she's trying to take on the responsibility of her grandson. And sometimes, knowing the child's at-home situation definitely makes a huge difference when you're handling kids. You learn how to talk to them in a different way. You learn how to be more understanding and be more patient. So I believe that reaching out to the parent, having that communication, in this situation it was a parent-teacher conference, so having a parent-teacher conference, it really will open your eyes to a lot of things that are going on with the child that can help you to give them their best education.
Could you report to the front for dismissal? Donnell Sawyer, could you report to the front for dismissal? Ms. Thomas, could you report to the front desk, please? Ms. Thomas, could you report to the front desk? Thank you.
Sorry, we had a little brief interruption, but yeah, so it'll help you to be more patient and more understanding with that child. So now we want to use the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule is when the communication is not always negative. So like I mentioned before, kids always look at parent-teacher communication as something negative. You're assuming, oh my gosh, you're gonna call my mom, what did I do now? And the parents feel the same way. Anytime they get a phone call from the school, they are assuming that it's something bad. They don't want that phone call. So a lot of times that is the response that you get. They'll answer the phone, they will sound frustrated. They will sound as if you're burdening them. And they have every right to feel that way if you're only going to call about negative things. So you want to make sure that 80% of your conversation is positive. You want to let them know about the positive things that the child is doing in class. Nobody wants to feel that everything my child does is horrible. I am a parent myself. However, my child is in daycare. But of course, it's frustrating any parent. Every time I go pick my daughter up, she's in the sad chair. I would hate to believe that my child is that bad every day to where she needs to be in the sad chair every time I pick them up. Parents feel the same way. They care about their children, so they don't want to only hear negative things. They want to hear some positives.
Can you report to the front for dismissal? Jonathan Braxton, can you report to the front for dismissal? Thank you.
I'm so sorry. We are having a busy day here at Churchland. But yes, so we want to make sure we keep it positive. So your communication should not only happen when the child has done something wrong. We want to keep it positive, and we want to support the concerns with concrete evidence. Because a lot of times the child will go home and have a totally different story from what you have. So you might call them and tell them something that's going on within the room. The child will go home and have a brand new story as to what happened. They'll have every reason in the book as to why it happened. But when you can have concrete evidence, that makes it a lot easier. So follow me over here. So right here we have folder systems that I use in my class. So I have first, second, third, and fourth. The students keep their work in here. We keep our warm-ups, our classwork, our homework. I just have evidence of everything that the child has done in my class. Every quarter we empty out our folders and then we start with a brand new one. We also keep our rules contract in there. So they can't say that they don't know the rules of my classroom. These were established on day one. First day of school, we got the pink sheet. They signed it and they keep it in their folder all the way until the end of the school year. So when you have these things in place, you can show the parent, he knows the rules in my class. He signed the rule slip. He signed our pink rule slip. You can show him, you can show the parent every day. He comes into class and he does not complete his warm-up, or every day he does a great job, he comes into class, he completes his warm-up. However, my problem is falling with the homework. He never returns back to school with homework. So you actually need concrete evidence to kind of show and prove to the parent that the child is doing some of those positive or even negative things that you're speaking of. On top of my folder system, I also have a progression chart. And I know that we just finished our benchmarks, and that's when we started to get prepared for SOL. So it's our very last benchmark. I made certificates for some of the students in my class for the highest score and for the most improved. So you don't always have to be a straight A student, be a top A or B student to get recognized. Students want to be recognized just for an improvement. If I went from a 30% on a test all the way up to a 60 might still be a failing grade, but you raised your score by 30%, that speaks on levels. And I always acknowledge the kids for improving, because small strides make a difference. And they boost your confidence, they make the parents feel good, because sometimes the parents will look at the grade like, oh, you failed, and think it's negative. But sometimes when you turn it into a positive and let them know, hey, your child has come a long way. It might look like a 60 in the grade book, it might look like a failing grade. However, that is a huge improvement from what they were doing at the beginning of the year, and it speaks on levels that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing as a teacher in the classroom. So that gives them trust, that instills trust in you, and it lets them know that your child is also doing the right thing because they're catching on to the information. All right, so there are different types of communication. You have one-way communication and two-way communication. One-way communication would be, information that goes from the sender to the receiver. The same way that I'm presenting this presentation, I don't expect a response. I'm just giving you information, hoping that you're listening to it and that you understand the information. A lot of times that's where teachers, go wrong when they're calling a parent. You call them, you give them a lot of information, but you don't ask for their advice, you don't ask for their feedback, you're just simply calling them to vent about their child. That's one-way communication. However, when we're dealing with students and we're dealing with children, we want that communication to be two-way, because who knows the child better than their parent? Sometimes we need to humble ourselves and take a step back and admit to the parent, I'm having a problem dealing with little Johnny in my class. I've tried moving his seat. I've tried giving him time out in a different classroom. I've tried giving him extra time to complete his work, but yet he's still not getting it done. Can you please give me some advice? Can you please give me some feedback as to how I can work with him? How can we work together to make sure that he succeeds in my class? So that's the type of communication that you want to have with parents. You want to get them involved. That even goes back to the slide that says, why aren't they involved? Some parents are not involved because they don't believe they even have a voice. You want the parent to know you do have a voice in my classroom. I rely on you just as much as you rely on me. So when they know that you trust in them and you rely on them, people want to feel needed. They want to feel wanted. They want to feel appreciated. And when you can relate to the parents and let them know, hey, I'm a parent myself. I definitely understand how you feel. They are a lot more receptive to that information. And it even boils down back to the 80-20 rule. They're a lot more receptive to information when everything that comes out of your mouth is not negative. Of course, you will have those negative phone calls, but they go a lot easier when you have some positive things to back up your message. So there are different forms of communication. You want to communicate with the parent in the best way for them. So some people like to be emailed. If they work from home, if they work from a computer, if they have a job where they can sit at their desk, answer and respond to emails. Sometimes I found that emailing certain parents is easier for them because they might not respond to a text or a phone call. Also, when I email parents, I have a paper trail. So if things start to accumulate, if I'm just having a tough time with that student, I can go to my principal, my assistant principal. I communicated with the parent on this date, on that date, and on this date. I have 3 different times where I've communicated with the parent. Nothing has changed. So you actually have good concrete evidence and you have a paper trail. That's very important. Some parents like to get a phone call. You want to hear my voice, I want to hear yours. The feedback is immediate. We can have a conversation, and sometimes that goes very well. I've had parents who have asked to speak to their child right in the middle of class. So it just truly depends on the parent. Texting is definitely a lot more prevalent nowadays. A lot of times I can send a text, I can get an immediate response, or they can respond when they're ready. If I text you when you're at work, you don't have to respond right away. You can wait till you get off work, till you get home, then you can respond. You can have time to think about it. You can discuss it with your child. But, it's all up to the parent how they want to communicate. Once you find the way that works best for you, you want to use it. Because like I said, depending on the student, I know how to contact their parent. I might know that little Johnny's dad doesn't answer when I call him, but every time I send an email, he responds. I might know that Marcus's mom answers the phone as soon as she sees my number, and she will talk to Marcus right then and there if I call her, and he will be on his best behavior for the rest of the day. So it truly just depends on the student. You have to truly take that time out to learn the parents and to learn the student. That is when you get the best results. So in closing, once you learn the right strategies, you can communicate effectively with every student's family, your classroom, or school. And with time, persistence, communication can grow into a strong parent-teacher relationship. This is the goal. The goal is graduation. The goal is being a good moral citizen, having character, having good values, growing and learning. That's what we're doing with these kids. We're trying to, these kids are our future, and we're shaping our future. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I hope that you see the benefits of parent-teacher communication and how we can build a successful bond amongst the parent, the teacher, and the student. Thank you.